Hello, this is Professor Bustillo-Booth. This is a wrap-up for weeks 5 through 6, and this is part 1, Nature of Management. During the 2 weeks, we focused in on the theme Managing for Quality and Competitiveness. There were 3 chapters. This video will focus in on Chapter 6, Nature of Management, and there will be 2 other videos for Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. Let's start with some definitions. Management is the planning, organizing, leading, and controlling of an organization's activities to meet objectives. Managers are those individuals responsible for the effective and efficient achievement of the organization's objectives. Effectiveness here is defined as the ability to meet results. Efficiency is this idea of being able to meet those results with as little waste as possible. And objectives here are basically what you want to get, or simply goals. Now, in terms of business goals, they ought to be SMART. And SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, what exactly is the objective. It is difficult to know you've actually met a goal if it is not clearly defined. So it needs to be specific. And that also it needs to be measurable so that you know you've achieved the goal. And so these are typically in terms of percentages, numbers, and dollars. And they ought to be achievable. There's no point trying to put together a goal that cannot be achieved. And it also ought to be challenging. And relevant. It has to be relevant in terms of the overall mission. So it is in keeping of what the organization is all about. And that it ought to be time-bound, so it should be able to identify by when will this objective be met. There are 4 roles of management. The first is planning, and planning is really the tactical, strategic, and operational decision-making process to determine and achieve objectives against the mission. And these objectives can be anything around several things, one of which is marketing, financial, could also be operational, your day-to-day activities, or legal, and or political, as well as environmental. There are other objectives, of course. And secondarily, there is the role of organizing. And organizing is a structuring of resources. And when we talk about resources, we're talking about talent or people and the use of time and money, all to achieve the objectives. And then there is leading. Your book talks about leading in terms of staffing and directing, but we really sort of put that together as leading. And it is to use the staff or leverage the staff and resources toward, again, the achievement of objectives. And then there is this idea of controlling, which is the evaluation and correction of activities to keep the organization on course. And you can think of controlling also in terms of complying with the law and being able to address and meet the kinds of challenges that come because of changes in the marketplace and the ability to be innovative in the face of market threats or even before market threats come up. So controlling really is the idea of being able to steer the organizations towards the right direction. And all of these roles are to meet the mission, and they are met through the objectives. That's really important to understand. And planning, I'm going to go back a little bit on planning because that's so critical. And there are generally 3 kinds of plans. The first is this idea that is strategic, and strategic plans tend to be long range or more than a year and usually about 3 years. Okay, and then there are things called the tactical plans, and they're short range. And tactical plans are those that support the strategic plans, and those are typically 1 year long. And then there are operational plans, and they're very short term. They could be day to day, week to week, month to month. and they are supportive of the tactical plans, so those tactical plans can be executed. And the tactical plans are those plans that bring to life the strategic plan. So these are all related. So let's look at this in terms of an example. Let's say you have a mission to be the market leader of widgets. You will then need to set an objective. Let's say, for example, an objective around marketing, a goal of a 5% market penetration in 2 years. And you can see here that this is a SMART goal, right? It is specific, it is measurable, it is attainable or achievable because within 2 years. It's not like 50% market penetration in 2 years. That would be a very difficult thing to achieve. And it's relevant against the mission because you want to be the market leader of widgets. And perhaps there's a lot of widgets already, but you can start in 2 years with 5% and then work yourself up with another objective, as well as time bound, because you have identified your time frame here, 2 years. Then you will need to put together strategic plans. And in this case, you have 2 strategies to have a market penetration, and one of which is brand awareness, and secondarily, a product introduction of some sort. In order to do that, you will need to execute some tactical plans. So under brand awareness, you might go ahead and have ads. So you will be deploying ads within that year to bring brand awareness, and also pursuing earned media in order to have brand awareness. And earned media are ones that are not paid. So ads would be ad placement, say on Facebook, or banners across web pages and that sort of thing. An earned media would be stories that the media picks up and starts talking about you. And then in terms of product introduction, in this case, you might introduce the first version earlier in the year, and then a second version of that widget in the second part of the year. And it is concurrent with your work around ads and earned media. And then you will also need operational plans. So to execute your ads, say on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, monthly or quarterly basis, and this might be, this could be Facebook, and again, at different, or Google ads, that sort of thing. And those are done on, very short-term basis, and they rotate. Same here for earned media. You will have operational plans to execute on being able to get the media to pay attention to you and write about you, for example. And then there is the production and design and production of the product you're introducing into the marketplace. In this case, for this set here for version 1, and then also for version 2. And so you can see that these are all related. It begins with a mission, to have an objective, and then against that objective you have strategies, and in your strategies there has to be a way to execute them, and those are the tactical means to do that, and that your tactical plans have to be supported at the ground level so that they can come to life. Now let's talk about the 3 layers of management. The first one are the first line managers. And those are typically 4 persons, supervisors, office managers, store managers, anything like that. They're the first line management folks. And then in the middle are aptly called middle managers. And they could be plant managers, division managers, department managers, and the like. There are many kinds of titles. And then at the very top of the pyramid are the top managers. President, the CEO, executive vice presidents, and that sort of thing. And if you've heard the term C-suite, those would be top management. It's called C-suite because it is, the chief executive officer, the chief marketing officer, and then, all kinds of other chiefs. They're all at the top. And the first line managers are usually responsible for the tactical and operational plans. And in this case, while they are responsible for tactical and operational, much of their work is on the operational end, the day-to-day work. And then the middle managers are also responsible for all 3, strategic, tactical, and operational, but most of their work are going to be on the tactical end of it. Okay. And then at the very top, they are, the strategists. They're the ones who come up with the major strategies that are then executed at the next layers of management. Another way to think of the first line managers are in terms of, not just the first line managers, but all of managers, are in terms of the four roles. So in this case, the first line managers are, they are responsible to one degree or another against the four roles: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. But in this case, they really are largely responsible for the controlling end, making sure that the staff are compliant with the law, that they're executing the tactical as well as the operational plans according to specs, for example, and that they can be nimble against changes in the market space. And then the middle management, again, they all also work within all of these roles, but mainly the most important part of their job will be in the organizing, the structuring of the resources so that things get done. And then the top level, again, they oversee all of these four roles, but their biggest role really is in the planning, which has a lot to do with in the visioning of what's going on and the execution of the strategies, or even the coming up with the strategies and making sure that they're executed. Now, as managers, you will need several skills, one of which is a technical expertise, and this is the ability to possess certain specialized knowledge and training to perform a job. And so, for example, accountants are going to need accounting kinds of skills, and IT information technologists are going to have computer skills, and finance managers are going to need to know some finance information. Will need to have specialized knowledge around finance and also need to be highly trained in their field. Now, conceptual skills are a little more difficult to attain, but they are generally the idea of being able to think abstractly, to think of theory and their application on the ground. And you'll be able to see big picture patterns, to be able to use multiple perspectives and see how sort of the beast functions in the world, and to have creative problem-solving skills. And these are typically the skill sets that are needed by top-level managers. And also, analytical skills are very, very important. They're increasingly more important now as more of the jobs are, threatened by automation. And so machines are generally not able to analyze things very well because they don't possess the kind of judgment that human beings can possess. And so analytical skills are the ability to take problems apart, see them in their component parts, to determine the relevance of each issue and the relationships among the issues, and then to also understand causes and effects. So this is really higher order critical thinking skills. And then just having another skills around human relations, or generally speaking, people skills. Those are very important skills to have because managers, of course, work with people all the time. Managers, of course, engage in a lot of decision making. Your book goes over a traditional decision making model, and I will go over it now with some emphasis on certain steps so that we can really drive this home. So the first step is the identification of the problem, and it is really important that problems and symptoms be distinguished here. Often this is a common mistake where symptoms are mistaken as problems. So for example, in an organization or a company, a problem might be seen as that a particular widget sales is down. Say it's down 45% in sales, right? And so people well, then the marketing department might think, okay, so we need different ads, so that, or we need to change the price, and or we need to have different promotions, that sort of thing. But that may not be actually the problem. And the underlying problem might be that the product itself that was introduced, the widget, did not communicate or capture the value that the customers were looking for. It doesn't actually meet the needs of the customers, and so that's why the sales are down. And so that is actually the problem. Then the ads and sales and promotions will not necessarily address the sales problem. You need to go back to the board and make sure that whatever is being offered actually meets the needs and wants of the customer. And so again, it is very important to be able to distinguish a problem from symptoms. Assuming you do have the problem identified correctly, you can now develop options, right? So if, for example, in this case, the product did not necessarily meet the needs of the customers, then you have to go back to the drawing board and redefine the product. And you might actually have to do some research and that like. Assuming you do have the options, you'll then need to look at your options and take it apart and say, okay, which ones of these will actually meet our objectives, right? And so then you will select a best option and execute on that decision. And ultimately, at the end, you'll want to monitor and evaluate the results to see how things really went. So let's go over a kind of an example. Let's say, for example, you have accurately identified the problem as that customers don't recognize the brand. This is a significant problem. Let's say you're a new company and you're trying to penetrate the market. The customers just don't understand what you're about. And so you come up with 3 options, one of which is celebrity endorsements. Secondarily, you're looking at a Super Bowl ad. It's very expensive. And that there's an earned media campaign. And then what you do is you analyze, you weigh each of those against certain criteria. What is likely to be effective, what's likely to be efficient, the length of time or the cost. You may have several criteria, but you need to have some criteria against which to analyze whether something is going to be effective and efficient, right? And then let's say that you've made a decision and you're going to go with an earned media campaign. You're a brand new company, cannot afford a Super Bowl ad, and celebrity endorsements are incredibly difficult and fickle. And so you've decided you're going to go for an earned media campaign. So, you have a lot of blogs, you have people talking about your widget through Facebook. You may be giving away your widgets and having people write about them. And now you will use the roles of management and implement them as a marketing manager by using the planning, organizing, leading, and controlling to execute on your option that you've decided, right? And then you will then need to monitor that, evaluate the results, and correct or modify to see if this is working. So that is a classic decision-making model. Again, be sure that you've identified the problem correctly, because from there the ball sort of rolls down the lane, and if you haven't correctly identified the problem, then these options may not necessarily solve the problem you've got. If you do want to be a manager, there are certain things to keep in mind. One of which is that they're highly skilled and wanted, and they get paid very well, in fact, and that you can get a lot of these skills, to be technical, conceptual, analytical, or otherwise, through training. All right? No one is born a highly skilled manager. You gain those skills through time with some exposure and experience as well as training. Also, please keep in mind that there are now what's called the 4 C's, and they are around the ability to critically think, to have superb communication skills, and ability to work with others, and also to be able to exercise some creative thinking. Okay. You also want to be nimble, to be flexible and tech savvy, which really means that you're willing to go with the flow and learn the things that you need to learn, right? Because in the business world, things change very, very quickly, and that if you're not nimble and you're not flexible and willing to embrace changes in technology, well, somebody right behind you will be willing to take your position. So you need to be willing to be a lifelong learner. And then, of course, you have to have solid people skills. You need to like people. It will really help a lot. And that you're able to work and harness the power of a diverse workforce, because the workforce we have is increasingly diverse. They have different perspectives and they bring a lot to the table. And you have to be able to help them sort of harness the power of teams. Now, this class is a survey class, and we will not be able to go over all the very different layers of management and or leadership. So if you are interested in this topic, I highly recommend you pursue Management 283, Principles of Management, and Management 194, Principles of Leadership. I teach both of those classes, as do several other professors. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk with you again soon.